All righty, folks. It is 9 o'clock. There's a few people still haven't showed up. We'll get them when they come in. Okay. Today's just a quick go over on the bandsaw, and then there is a miter saw quiz. I'm going to go ahead and open that. All right. So, all right. All right. So, oh, there's Logan. Hold on. So the bandsaw. You guys pretty well know the bandsaw. Consists of the following things. Table. This one actually has a base, not a fixed top bandsaw that you often in fixed top. This has an enclosed base. The lower wheel on this is a 14-inch bandsaw. So the van release wheel is 14 inches. The lower wheel is the drive wheel. In other words, the motor is the shaft of the motor attached to this. The upper wheel is the adjustable wheel. In other words, it can be raised and lowered to remove the blade, raised to replace the blade and tension the blade. And it also angles this way to keep the blade tracking on the center of the wheel. Okay. You should know that the blade's going to move in this direction, in other words, down into the bed through this throat and this throat plate. The teeth are pointed in a downward direction. So in essence, when this blade is moving downward, people start to move your cut. It's holding the material down to the table as opposed to trying to pick it up off the table. Okay. A couple things about blades. Oh, I'm sorry. There's one more thing I want to make sure. I'm trying to use this term more and more as we go. The speed of this bandsaw is not controllable. You have control over the feed rate. In other words, the rate at which we feed our material into the blade. Okay, so the speed is constant. This is a basic bandsaw blade. This is actually an 1/8-inch bandsaw blade. It basically measures the width of the blade itself, as opposed to, say, a 1/2-inch blade, where this blade's about a 1/2 inch wide. Now, the biggest difference between these two blades is not only their size, but how they cut. The smaller blade, the skinnier blade, the tighter turns you can make. Okay, the wider the blade can't make nearly as tight a turn. That's why on the resaw bandsaw, the 1-inch wide blade is not intended to cut curves. Okay, it's intended to cut fairly straight. All right. Although a bandsaw, in essence, is not intended to cut straight lines. It cannot cut straight lines. It's not what it's supposed to do. One of the reasons they can't do that is that this blade is very flexible. Okay, so when you get a board into it, it's flexible. It can twist and it can bend left and right, and it can bend forward and back. Okay, so that's one of the reasons when we set this up, if we're ready to cut, we keep this foot approximately 1/4 inch above the material. Okay, that helps control how much this blade will twist and flex. There's another foot just like this directly under the table. The way this foot is designed has 3 main parts. Okay, there's 2 guide blocks, one on either side of the blade. These guide blocks are set so they very, very lightly touch either side of the blade, like right off the bat, a bandsaw is not intended to cut straight lines. I don't care which bandsaw you're using, whether it's these or the Resaw bandsaw. Their job is not to cut straight lines, okay? They're intended to cut curves. All right, so I'm going to zoom in on this a little bit. It's really muffled. That sucks. So let me see. Try something a little different. Is that any better at all? It might have been the heater going. This heater's cranking like crazy. Can you hear me any better now? It looks like you should be able to, but I can't tell. I see the little thing bouncing up and down on the microphone, but I can't tell. Okay, so let's see if that's any better. Is that okay? Can you get? Is it only any better over here? Hello. Okay, a little better. All right. So basically, what we're looking at here is anytime you're at the bandsaw, you should have a line that you're going to follow. It shouldn't be just a free hand without anything that you're going to follow. You should have some sort of mark as to what you want to cut. And it's also a good idea to, hold on, I got two people coming in late. Does anyone want to guess if one of them is sucrose or not? Oh, look at that. It is. Okay. So you should have some sort of a line that you're following. All right. And it's always good practice, no matter what, especially on the miter saw and the bandsaw, to place an X on the side of the line that you're not going to keep. In other words, this would be the scrap portion. This would be the portion you're going to keep, so that you know you want the bandsaw to run on this side of the line. Whenever we cut on the bandsaw, we practice what's called saving the line. What we want to do is start our cut next to the line, not on the line. There is no way you're going to be able to follow a line exactly with the bandsaw. That's one reason. The second reason is, since the teeth on this bandsaw are offset, every other tooth points to the left or to the right, it leaves a very rough surface when it cuts. So that surface is going to have to be cleaned up, okay, at the spindle sander or the edge sander. So that gives us, if we save the line, if we cut out here, keep forgetting me, you guys can't see it. If we cut out here next to the line, that gives us enough material to do two things: to clean up the bandsaw marks and to sand it to the line, because you can't follow a line exactly on the bandsaw. All right. So when we cut, we're going to set the foot about 1/4 inch above the material. I just take my fingertip, put it under the foot, and go down until it touches the board. Okay. And when we cut, we stay outside the line. Now, I don't know if you'll be able to, I don't know if it's going to mess up how well you can hear me or not. So I'll kind of stay over here. So a couple safety things on the bandsaw. Good, thank you. Never have your fingers or your hands in the path of the blade. Have them on either side of the blade or to one side of the blade. Or when you're finishing a cut, you can actually pull your board through to the finished cut from the back. Okay. So we're going to place it next to the line, and as we're going, one of the tricks on the bandsaw is don't try to force it left or right, but rotate the board. When I get to a turn, I'm going to start to really rotate this board. It's a pretty drastic rotation. All right. If I start to get away from my line or too close to the line, it's Enrique. Hold on. If I start to get too close to the line, or if I start to move away from the line, all I have to do is back up a little bit and start a new cut. Get back to the line. Okay. So if I get a little away, like I did just there, just back up a little bit, turn it tighter. When I get to the next turn, I'm really going to rotate this board. You can see how much it's rotating, okay? And I'm going to finish my cut, all right? So a bandsaw, for those of you that have used it very much, you'll know for a fact that it takes practice, okay? It's not one of those things you're just going to kick butt on the first time you walk up to it. It does take some practice, okay? You're better off starting a little further away from line, making your cut, coming back, making a second cut to get closer to the line, okay? If you have to make a tight turn, that is tighter than the width of the current blade will accommodate. In other words, the skinnier the blade, the tighter turns you can make. But if you have to make a really tight turn like that, you can make relief cuts. And a relief cut is nothing more than coming in with the blade and making little cuts like that come in close to your mark, close to your final curve, making a series of small cuts that come in, so that when you come in here and you start to make your cut, these pieces will start to fall away and allow you to make a little bit tighter turn, okay? So, that's the basics on the bandsaw. Safety is just keep your hands and fingers out of the path of the blade. One of the other biggest reasons safety you have, as you're cutting, you're going to find that you end up with little pieces sitting in the way. You may be tempted to take the finger and flick them out of the way of the blade. That's a very, very bad idea. Half the time when you try to do that, you're going to flick your fingernail into the moving blade, and there goes your fingernail. It's going to come off, okay, along with part of your finger. So just like any other machine in the shop, we always want to stop the machine, wait till the blade comes to a complete stop before trying to remove any scrap material. Okay, that goes for the table saws. It's really important on the table saws, the bandsaw, the router tables, the miter saw, anything like that. Wait until the blade comes to a complete stop before you try and remove any scrap material. Okay. I can't think of a lot more, honestly, for you guys on the bandsaw. The biggest issues are making sure the foot is set at the right height, making sure that the foot's adjusted properly. That's pretty much my job. But if you see a gap between the sides of the blade and these little blocks here, let me know and I can adjust them. Okay, right now it's not adjusted very well in the thrust bearing. The thrust bearing is actually touching the back of the blade right now, and it looks like that thrust bearing is a little worn out. You need to replace the bearings. So that's one of those things I'll try and get ready before you guys come back. But also, if you hear a consistent ticking sound on the blade when you turn it on, in other words, tick, 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 what that means is the blade is cracked, okay, and it's going to break sooner rather than later. So if you do hear that consistent ticking sound when you start the machine, just turn it off and let me know so I can swap the blade out. The blades usually break on the weld where they're cut to length and spot welded together and ground down. That's normally where they break. That's generally a manufacturing issue. The blades I can afford for this shop aren't the best blades in the world. It's cheaper to get 2 or 3 cheap blades than one expensive blade and just replace them as they break. They also bend as well. You'll see little bends and twists in them sometime, but that's generally not a huge problem. So that's the basic safety, the basic use on the bandsaw. You guys hopefully already knew all that stuff. Okay, so let me grab a couple things over here that I used in the first period. And this may sound a little bit, how do I put this? This may sound a little beginnerish. Is that a word, beginnerish? It is now, I just said it, so it's a word. Okay, so the quiz you're going to take, okay? Here are the questions on the quiz. I'll go over the questions. I keep getting nervous about this, folks, because by the time you guys show up, at best, you'll have been gone for a year, okay? So you can forget an awful lot in a year. Heck, I've forgotten things in here, not using them as much. Geez, I think I used the CNC not long ago, and it was like, oh my gosh, I forgot how to do this. But a little bit of research and practice and effort, and you get it back down to it. So we do go back to some pretty basic things in here from time to time, and that's just the way it is. So the miter saw quiz, true or false? The table saw is the best choice when cutting to length, all right? That is false. And this is the little thing I used in the beginning class, first period. Okay, so the table saw makes rip cuts, right? Rip cut alters the overall width of the blade. In other words, if I have a board like this that is 6 inches wide, I could go to the table saw and I could rip it down to 2 inches wide, 4 inches wide, 3 inches wide, 5.5 inches wide, whatever. In other words, the blade moves across the board like this. That is a rip cut, okay? We do not do cross cuts on the table saw. We do not cut to length On the table saw, we cut to width. Okay, table saw, my thumb's over it, rip to width. You guys should be able to see that. Okay. The miter saw is where we make cross cuts, right? We cross cut to final length. That's the blade cutting across this direction. Okay. So anytime you see the word cross cut, you should instantly be thinking miter saw. All right. So the first one, true or false? Table saw is the best choice when cutting to length. False, it's the miter saw. Okay, so false is the answer. The second one, a board must be at least how many inches long to safely cut to length on the miter saw? Shortest board you can take over the miter saw to cut is 6 inches long. Just for your viewing pleasure, 6 inches is about the length of a dollar bill. I would guess it's probably about the length of a $100 bill, but it's been so long since I've seen one of those, I wouldn't know how long those things are. But 6 inches is the minimum length you can walk up to the miter saw and trim or cut. Okay. The next one. If I have to cross cut 2 or more boards to the same length, okay, I have to use a stop. Okay, 2 or more boards that need to be the same length, you got to use a stop. In other words, we can't take a long board and sit there and measure from one end out to 6 inches, make a cut. Measure from that end 6 inches, make a cut. It's not going to happen. You're not going to get consistent length. Okay, so you have to use a stop. So the question is, always use a stop block when cross-cutting more than one board at the same length on the miter saw. Okay, the next question, the edge of your board must be tied against the blank on either side of the blade when cross-cutting on the miter saw. The edge of your board must be tied against the fence. Now, this is a sticking point for me, and I'm going to push this when you guys get back. If you have followed the order of operations in the shop properly, okay? If you've done one edge on the joiner, I'm sorry, I take that back. If you've thicknessed it properly where you have 2 flat parallel faces and a consistent thickness, then if you've gone over to the joiner and jointed one edge and then ripped the opposite edge on the table saw, creating 2 flat, square, parallel edges, then when you go to the miter saw, there is no way the edge of your board will not be tied against the fence. In other words, if you've got 2 flat parallel faces and you've got 2 flat, straight, parallel edges, then the face will be tight to the table on either side of the blade and the edge will be tight to the fence on either side of the blade at the miter saw. There's no way it won't be, okay? If you take a rough board, or if you screw that order of operations up somehow, okay, and you do the thickness but don't do the width before you go to the miter saw, it's possible you won't have tight contact on either side of the blade with the fence, okay? But you follow the order of operations, kickback on the miter saw should never happen. When we're back in here, you hear somebody get kicked back on the miter saw, you know for a fact they did not follow the order of operations before they stepped up to the miter saw, okay? So that should be a no-brainer. The last question, how many cuts does it take to accurately cut a board to length on the miter saw? The answer to that is 2. The first cut is a trimming and squaring cut. It squares one end so that you can now either slide that clean, just cut in up to a stop, make the other cut at the other end, or you can measure from that end if you're cutting a single board out and cut the opposite end off. So it always takes 2 cuts to cut a board to length on the miter saw. Okay, so that is the quiz. Now let me show you what's going on here. I forgot to do something. I forgot to share. All right, we're gonna minimize that. All right, so the quiz is active. When you go to the quiz, there's a short explanation. Today's quiz covers the safe operation of the miter saw. Below, you will find a link to a copy of the woodshop safety test answer sheet. This link will take you to a copy of the safety test with all of the correct answers included. If you find yourself having difficulty with any of the answers on the quiz, simply click on the link and find the question on the safety test that you're having trouble with. The correct answer will be found there. All of the questions on the quiz are taken directly from the safety test. Nothing has been changed. So when you're taking the quiz, if you wanted to open this in a separate tab, there's the safety test. I took all the questions from it directly from this test. For example, here's the first one. True or false, the table saw is the best choice when cutting to length. False is the correct answer. So that's all the answers you need if you have trouble with any of these questions, all right? And that was just found through the modules. Once again, modules, bam, miter saw quiz right there, okay? So at this point, yep, good, Logan. At this point, if you finish the quiz, you're welcome to bail. That's gonna be it for today. Go ahead and take the quiz. You can actually take the quiz at any point in time today. The grades should roll over at midnight tonight. But that's gonna be it for the day. You guys are welcome to go. Thank you for being here. Geez, I look forward to having you guys back in the shop soon. Hopefully that'll happen. You guys take care of yourselves, and I will see you all tomorrow, okay? Bye, folks.